All right, what's up? What's up? Wes Mitchell here with Chris Clark, another Gamecock Central production, another Gamecock Central YouTube video talking roster breakdown. Again, Chris, we've talked about the offense so much. We got to give the defense some love. And I kind of went back and forth about how to split this up as far as the position groups go. But I believe I've settled on Bucks and defensive ends. In South Carolina's scheme, those are separate positions, but a lot of times, especially when they're in four-down line looks, the buck sort of lines up much like a defensive end. Anyway, and, I think I'm going to start with the guy everybody talked about pretty much the entire recruiting cycle for 2020, and that's Jordan Burch from right down the road, Hammond School, which is about 5 minutes from my house where I'm recording this right now. And I thought it was interesting, Chris, when they talked about the Bucks this spring, when they actually did get to talk to the media, Will Muschamp, I'm talking about, and Travaris Robinson. They mentioned Brad Johnson, who I think needs to have a good year for South Carolina as a veteran. They mentioned Hot Rod Fenton, who is a guy that some people have compared to Bryce Allen Williams from a skill set standpoint, redshirted last year. We'll see what they get out of him this year. But then that was sort of it. That tells me that there's going to be every opportunity in the world for Jordan Burch, Mr. Five-Star, the guy that has been talked about more than any other recruit in a long time here. He's going to have every chance to play. How quickly will he play? How quickly can he pick everything up? We'll see. But I think just the way things set up, that the guy is going to be on the field pretty early in some way, and he has the skill set. I think that's the big thing. Jordan Burch's skill set, I think, matches what they want to do at that position traditionally. And I think it'll be interesting to see just how quick he can find his way out there.
You're exactly right. When you have the situation where sort of skill and talent meets opportunity, you've got a really good formula for a guy, and that's exactly where things are with Jordan Burch. And it's not to say, Wes, that he's going to step in and be the starter, that he's going to be pulling down 50 snaps a game. I think certainly as a freshman and one who did not enroll early, despite sort of the limitations that everybody had early this year in the spring into the summer in preparing for this season, it's going to be a huge transition for him going from high school football at the Skeeza level where he dominated, Hammond dominated for the most part. It's going to be a big transition from that to the SEC, and that's the case for any high school or even any junior college prospect. But Jordan has elite level talent. I mean, this is a guy who you're talking about someone who's 6'6", 270, and they could line him up at wide receiver and throw him a little slant or a bubble screen, and he can take it 75 yards. I mean, no matter the level of competition, it's impressive athleticism. So he does definitely fit into that Buck mold. When you think about some of the guys that they've employed there in the past for the DJ Wanham, or, you think back to Florida and you look at Dante Fowler, Carl Lawson at Auburn, just guys who are big, fast, athletic. And so whether it's, covering somebody out in the flat, Burch can do that. Rushing the passer, he's got size, twitch, athleticism, playing that spinner role where he's sort of lined up in the middle. He can just do a lot of those different things. And so with some uncertainty, you lose DJ Wanham. You need Brad Johnson to step up. I still think he's a talented guy who has a chance. Rod Fitton redshirted, but he's going to have a chance. But it is pretty open, and it's open for somebody to step in and take some playing time, and I think Burch has the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing, you talk to people at Hammond that see him play all the time, and he has that ability to be both a pass rusher from an athleticism standpoint, first step, all those things, but also the size where he can set the edge against the run. You see high school guys come in, and sometimes you see a guy that's more of just like a run stopper than other times you see guys that are maybe 6'5", 210 pounds at the high school level, and you're having to pack a bunch of weight on them. That's not the case with Jordan. I think he can already do all those things. There will obviously be a jump from Skeeza to SEC play. Nobody's saying there won't be. But like you said, man, the skill set is there. I'll be very curious. And I think he's going to have a chance, assuming the guys get back, June 1 or June 15th. There's a vote coming up. But we'll see what that means for incoming freshmen as well. But assuming he gets in and can go through summer weight program, there's been a lot of talk about what is he going to play at, what playing weight. I actually think you're probably going to see Jordan drop a little bit of weight when he gets in an SEC program and maybe reshape a little bit, and then maybe end up playing at 270, 275. But I wouldn't be surprised if he drops down to 260 or so first and then sort of put some weight back on. Okay, so the other guys we talked about, Brad Johnson came into South Carolina as a true freshman, played pretty early in his career, was just a pass rush dog in high school, made plays. We saw him at the Shrine Bowl practices. He really took over the Shrine Bowl game as a guy that lived in the backfield. He's played a lot early in his career. He missed last year with an injury, got the red shirt. What are your expectations now for Brad Johnson? I feel like he's kind of a little bit forgotten, but there's going to be some pressure on him, man, with no DJ Wanham, no Danny Fennell. Those guys are gone. So what are your expectations for him this year?
Well, I'd still setting the expectations and the bar fairly high for Brad Johnson. I mean, big shoes to fill and tough shoes to fill when you talk about losing a guy like DJ Wanham with his skill set and experience, everything that he brought to the table, a team captain. But, I've always sort of been banging the drum of Brad Johnson ever since high school. And, he hasn't quite made that impact yet. But I think there are a few reasons for that. Number one, you mentioned the injury last year. Secondly, coming in as a true freshman, he definitely fell into that category of a guy who probably needed a red shirt in year one. And just due to South Carolina needing more guys up front, he had to play. And he showed some flashes, certainly, and was one of the guys up front that year that by the end of the year, he was still healthy somewhat. I mean, he played, I think that was the year, Wes, where he played, it was that or year two where he played 90-something, 100-something snaps against Clemson and been sick the whole week. So, he's a guy that athletically I think has a lot. And that Shrine Bowl game you referenced, he was playing inside part of the time and was still dominating people. So he's powerful. He's got size, but he just hasn't been quite as consistent. Some of that's been injuries. Some of it's just he's had to take that step forward and continue developing. But Mike Peterson, his position coach, has talked highly of him in the past. And so I think there's still opportunity. I still think there's a skill set there where he could turn out to be a good player. So this is a good opportunity for him to break out. I think this is going to be a really big summer and preseason for Brad Johnson to sort of establish himself and be able to nab a starting spot.
Yeah, the other guy at that spot, like we said, Rod Fenton, will, without seeing much of spring, just hard really for us to know what the expectations are there, what to expect from him as he started to make a jump after redshirting last year. We really don't know yet. Let's shoot over to the true defensive end spot within this defense. You've got some depth there. You have two guys who played a lot last year that are both back, both rivals, four-star players out of high school, and Aaron Sterling, who's probably one of your more, I would say, underrated, underappreciated guys on the defense, JJ Enagbare. Don't remember what their exact numbers were as far as snaps, but really they rotated a bunch, basically split that position in half last year. I think Aaron probably started more, but they both played a lot. And then you have Joe Anderson, who I think is, someone that's been a little bit forgotten in all of this. I wondered, when Joe was recruited, is this going to be a guy that instantly grows into a defensive tackle? Can he be an edge guy? Where does he fit in? I think right now he's at the defensive end spot. So, I think you look at that spot, there's maybe not that all SEC guy necessarily, at least from what we've seen so far. But you do feel good about the depth, the experience, the talent, and it'll just be interesting to see if one of those guys can maybe take another step forward this year.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Sterling is a guy who plays a lot bigger than he is. He's 6'1", 250 or so, but whether it's rushing the passer, playing the run game, I think he's a really undervalued player. He's just really quick off the ball. He's really savvy and smart, has a really high football IQ, always a guy that I've liked a lot. JJ Enagbare, I mean, it was a big-time recruiting win for South Carolina over Georgia and a bunch of others out of Atlanta. And I think we saw him take a step forward last year, and really, he really blossomed towards the end of the year. And I think he'll be poised to take another step this year. Anderson is again, he's another 4-star guy out of Tennessee. It was a nice recruiting win for Carolina. He was actually the highest ranked guy out of all those. And as someone from a body type standpoint, Wes, you feel like he could play anything from buck to if they wanted to grow him and play him inside. But he sort of seemed to play on the end at one of those end spots. It's probably where he's going to be for the foreseeable future. And one thing that we heard last year, even during his redshirt year during practice, was that he showed some flashes of being able to rush the passer. And so that's something that'll be a welcome addition. I think there's going to be plenty of room for Joe Anderson to come in and potentially be able to log some snaps this year and, give this team, 20, 25 snaps a game and really help them out if he can continue progressing.
Do you have to maybe look at the possibility of playing one of the guys that sort of slotted as a defensive end, at buck? I think especially when you're in these 4-man fronts anyway and sort of playing basically 2 defensive ends, the buck is lined up as a defensive end, even though we know that spot lines up all over. I think that's something, if those guys aren't productive, you maybe look at that. Would I necessarily say I think that's going to happen? Probably not right now. I think there's enough juice there at buck to get the job done, but I think that's a possibility. Other wild cards to watch, Keir Thomas is back. He's someone that can still give you some snaps on the edge. We talked about it in our tight end video, which if you haven't watched it, go check that out. Eric Shaw, can he give you some pass rushing juice at the buck spot? I tend to think that South Carolina signing Jordan Burch means that won't necessarily be necessary. But, there is a scenario where Jordan Burch comes in, hits a college weight program, blows up in size, and lands at the other sort of true defensive end spot and starts pushing for time over there. And then maybe Eric Shaw fits a little bit more of what you're looking for at the buck. Now, I think Mike Bobo and Bobby Bentley are probably going to literally have their fists out to fight for Eric Shaw. So those are – I think it's one of those things. It's not like some other positions where there's some, like, questions that have to be answered or it's going to be bad there. I think you got a lot to work with and you got enough returning guys. But there are still some intriguing questions just about how everything is going to be slotted out positionally and from a depth chart standpoint that we'll learn in the next 4 months, I think.
That's right. And, another one, Wes, that I'd throw in there, not that I'd set the bar really high for expectations this year, but, Tonka Hemingway is a guy that positionally, whether it's, I think the question with him is because he moved between, 250s to 280s even at Conway because he was a 3-sport guy, baseball, football, basketball. And a lot of people think, hey, when he's football only, and really hits the weight room and focused only on that sport like he will be in college, he's really got a chance to sort of blow up. We don't really know what that'll look like. Could he move inside? Will he play more of like a 5-tech or a strong side sort of defensive end look? Remains to be seen. But he's a guy that they could at least look at there, with his body type. But I think it's probably more likely he redshirts this year if I had to take a guess. But you're right, a lot of pieces there and a lot to figure out. And for me, I think the Shaw thing is really intriguing because I think he could be really good at buck. I think he'd be really good at tight end. But if you feel good about what you've got with a Johnson, Burch, Fitton sort of trio there, and those guys, you're bringing along a couple young players and you got a veteran guy in Johnson, I would think maybe you think about leaving Shaw at tight end where he's got a huge upside too. But there is some intrigue and there's also some questions. I think it's fair to say that you got both there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think they've recruited very well on the defensive front. I think we've seen that. If you look at that position a few years ago, it was really a struggle for them up front and that affected the rest of the defense. It affected the linebackers' ability to make plays. It affect obviously the defensive backs and stuff like that, having to cover for so long. And then you really, I think, saw the defensive line start to come into its own last year, and the rest of the defense was able to play a bit better, when they weren't put right back on the field time after time by the offense, which is a completely other discussion. But, I think they've recruited well. I think they'll have a chance to sign another really good class in the class of 2021. We don't quite know what that's going to look like yet, but just textbook stacking talent on top of talent at that position. And that's honestly what you have to do. So All right, we're going to wrap it up for defensive ends and Bucks. We'll come back. Don't know what we'll do next, maybe defensive tackles, or maybe we'll go back over to the offense. But either way, we'll be back soon with another video. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube. Obviously, that's free. We're going to have videos pretty much daily from here on out. And obviously, we want to see you subscribe to GamecockCentral.com. We still have our free promotional deal going right now where you can get Gamecock Central free from now to August 1st. So be sure to check that out as well. For Chris Clark, I'm Wes Mitchell. We'll see you next time.